Did Mr. Wade say anything at that point? What did he say? At that point, Maurice Jackson started out of the tub. He had a gun, and you will hear that he could legally own a gun. He had a gun, and he took it out. 16 shots were fired in that bathroom. We do not know who shot first.
In the early hours of September 7th, 2021, a famous rapper was shot dead after being caught sleeping with a friend's wife. At around 2:30 a.m., Columbus police were called to an apartment at 3700 Buena Vista Road, responding to reports of a multiple shooting. What they found would shock them. The apartment's sliding door was ajar, blinds twisted out of place, and blood trailed from the door into the hallway, leading straight into the bathroom. There, the 26-year-old rapper lay lifeless, riddled with bullets, one in his chest, another in his arm, and one that tore through his back, exiting through his hip. But this was no random attack. As investigators combed through the scene, they discovered a damaged bathroom door, shattered shell casings, and bullet holes in the walls and shower curtain. After further investigation, they would uncover the chilling truth. The rapper had been shot dead after being caught sleeping with his friend's wife. A betrayal so shocking, no one could have predicted how it would end. What had started as a rising star's promise would unravel in the most deadly of love triangles. This is the life and death of Maurice Vaughn Jackson.
The hype last nigga side this shit. Hey, we spin your block for with your big dog begging me to quit. Hey, no riding rich, but on my side.
26-year-old Maurice Vaughn Jackson was born on January 14, 1995, in Columbus, Georgia. Growing up in a tough neighborhood, he had seen and experienced things that most people would rather not witness. He was no stranger to violence and hardship, which would later fuel his music career. Maurice's life story is one of resilience, surviving gunshots and the struggles of street life. But what set him apart was his passion. That passion was music, which offered him an escape and a chance to rise above his circumstances. His love for music started at an early age, and by the time he reached his teenage years, Maurice began channeling his experiences into rap.
Black boy lost his mother, Simo lost his mother, then I lost my brother from another mother. Yeah, I know she crossed.
With the stage name Lil Nuke, his style was raw and unapologetic, drawing from the realities of growing up in a challenging environment. Maurice's music didn't just speak to his own experiences, it connected with a larger audience that shared similar struggles. As he grew older, Maurice began to take his music more seriously.
I'm without a ring, without that shit, got me back up on that shit. You can tell I don't care about who I hit. The street nigga, you ain't gon' shit. Hit him or stick him up.
His unique style, blending street narratives with catchy hooks, quickly gained attention within the local rap scene. At just 17 years old, he signed with a local record label and began working on his first tracks. By 21, Maurice had built a small but dedicated fan base, and his songs were starting to get some local radio play. But despite his success in the music world, Maurice's personal life was not as glamorous. He had a troubled past marked by a series of unfortunate events, including a near-fatal shooting when he was only 13 years old. Maurice was shot while sleeping, an event that left a deep scar on his psyche.
I'm about like 13, but I got shot.
No.
Yeah, I got shot in my sleep.
7th grade?
7th grade, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
He survived, but the trauma would stay with him forever. It was this experience that drove much of his music. Each song was a catharsis, a way to process the pain and struggles that had shaped his life. But Maurice was known for something far more than his music, his loyalty to those he loved, especially his family. He was a son, a brother, and a father, and despite the turmoil in his life, he was deeply committed to his family. Maurice had a young child with a woman named Chana Powell, who would later become entwined in the tragic events leading to his death. Maurice's career as an artist while growing up was still a work in progress. His stage name, Lil Nuke, was gaining recognition, and his music was becoming a voice for the streets. He had a loyal group of friends and fans who respected him not just for his music, but for his determination to rise above the difficulties that surrounded him. His rap lyrics were a reflection of his life, filled with tales of perseverance, survival, and hope for a better future.
I was just a little boy, jumped up out the porch at 9, ayy. I don't know about you, boy, I saw my first brick at 5, ayy. You was just a schoolboy, I had money on my mind, ayy. Mama, she had left me for some time from slanging 9, ayy. Daddy down the road for traffic, can't he doing 5, ayy. Uncle showed me the ropes to the street, so I just died, ayy. Wish I would've never fell asleep, but I was tired, ayy. Shots ring out, one bullet hit me once, they ain't number God, ayy.
However, Maurice's personal life was complicated by his relationship with Shayna, his baby mama. Shayna was in an on and off relationship with a man named Quincy Wade, a man who would later become a central figure in Maurice's death. Quincy and Shayna had been dating for several years. The pair had a 7-year-old child, but their relationship had been filled by jealousy, tension, and violent episodes. It was during one of those breakup periods that Quincy and Maurice started seeing each other. But what no one knew was that Quincy believed he had the right to control Shayna's life. But sadly, that belief would lead to the tragic event no one saw coming. On September 7th, 2021, Maurice's life would come to a brutal end inside an apartment on Buena Vista Road in Columbus. Quincy had been sending threatening messages to Shayna throughout the day, expressing his anger over her being with Maurice. But things escalated quickly that night. Quincy, unable to bear the thought of Shayna being with someone else, decided to confront the couple. He knew Shayna was at the apartment with Maurice, and he couldn't accept it. At approximately 2:30 a.m., Quincy showed up at the apartment, and despite not being invited, he forced his way inside. Using the fact that his name was on the lease still, he managed to gain access through the sliding glass door. Maurice and Shayna, realizing the danger, ran to hide in the bathroom, but Quincy wasn't going to let them escape that easily. He kicked in the bathroom door, confronting Maurice and Shayna in a tense standoff. What followed was a deadly exchange of gunfire. Maurice and Quincy both fired at each other in the heat of the moment. Maurice was shot multiple times, once in the chest, which would later be determined as the fatal shot. Quincy, too, was injured, struck in both legs during the exchange. He managed to flee the apartment with the help of a friend, but not before leaving behind a trail of violence and destruction. Maurice was left lying in the apartment, bleeding out from the multiple gunshot wounds. His death was swift, and despite efforts to save him, he was pronounced dead at the hospital. Quincy, meanwhile, was treated for his injuries but soon became the prime suspect in the shooting. As news of the shooting spread, the authorities quickly responded. Officers arrived at the apartment, where they found the scene of chaos: a shattered door, bloodstains, and evidence of a violent altercation. They began interviewing witnesses, including Shayna Powell, who was the only other person present during the shooting. But Shayna's testimony would give different contradictions. Initially, she claimed that Quincy had forced his way into the apartment and threatened her with a gun. However, what she left out was that she had been in contact with Quincy earlier in the day and had even invited him over. Shayna also didn't mention that Quincy had put a gun to her head before the shooting began. The omission of these details would become a point of contention in the case. As the investigation continued, police found that Quincy had been the one who initiated the confrontation and had likely been the aggressor. Despite the self-defense claim, the evidence pointed to a premeditated act of violence, one fueled by jealousy and anger. Quincy was arrested and charged with multiple offenses, including second-degree murder, aggravated assault, and criminal trespassing. The arrest of Quincy Wade marked a significant turning point in the case. As detectives combed through the evidence, it became clear that this wasn't just another case of a domestic dispute gone wrong. What initially seemed like a tragic love triangle was now spiraling into a complex legal battle with high emotions on both sides. However, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. In the days following Quincy's arrest, investigators dug deeper into the relationship surrounding Maurice and Shayna. They uncovered a troubling pattern of violent interactions, particularly between Shayna and Quincy, which shed light on the true nature of the conflict. Quincy's behavior was far from innocent. He had been sending threatening messages to Shayna all day, and his violent history suggested a motive far beyond a simple confrontation. The trial of Quincy Wade for the murder of Maurice Vaughn Jackson began in earnest.
Testimony began this morning in the trial of a man accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend in September of 2021. Jurors are not tasked with deciding whether the defendant shot the victim. Rather, was it done in self-defense?
The courtroom was filled with tension as the defense and prosecution prepared to make their case. Maurice's family was in attendance, devastated by the loss of a young man with so much potential, while Shayna, the key witness, nervously awaited her time on the stand. Maurice's father, visibly heartbroken, was unwavering in his pursuit of justice for his son. Meanwhile, the defense, led by William Kendrick, argued that Quincy acted in self-defense. According to the defense, Maurice had opened fire first when Quincy entered the apartment. Quincy's injuries, they claimed, were evidence that he had been defending himself when Maurice shot at him.
The evidence is going to show that as they're having this conversation in the bathroom, Mr. Wade is facing towards where Mrs. Powell is, which is kind of in an area behind the bathroom door, across from the bathroom mirror. And they're having this conversation. All right? And at that point, Mr. Wade is shot twice. Shot twice by Mr. Jackson, who comes out of the shower curtain. Unbeknownst to Mr. Wade, doesn't even know he's there. And shot him twice. All right? And in response to that, Mr. Wade fires rounds to defend himself.
This argument was supported by Quincy's own testimony, where he stated that he feared for his life when Maurice, armed with a gun, confronted him. However, this was not the narrative the prosecution wanted to present. They painted a very different picture of the events that led to Maurice's tragic death. The prosecution contended that Quincy Wade was not a victim but a jealous ex-boyfriend whose rage at being rejected by Shayna led him to force his way into the apartment.
The way this case is about self-defense, but it's about Maurice Vaughn Jackson defending himself and Shayna.
They claimed that Quincy was not just protecting himself, but actively seeking a confrontation. The presence of multiple gunshot wounds to Maurice, including one fatal shot to the chest, suggested that Quincy's actions were not driven by self-defense, but by something much darker: jealousy and rage. But the courtroom drama would soon reach its peak. As the key witness, Shayna Powell was tasked with revealing what happened in the moments leading up to Maurice's death, but Shayna's testimony didn't come without controversy. She admitted that she had invited Quincy to the apartment that night, even though they were no longer in a relationship.
Did Mr. Wade say anything at that point? What did he say?
He did. And he put me into the stomach and said he'll keep me and my child.
But there was one problem. Shayna had failed to mention key details about the violent confrontation earlier in the day. She also didn't immediately tell the police about the gun being pointed at her head. The defense used this to cast doubt on her credibility, suggesting that she may have been embellishing her story to protect herself or to shield Quincy from the consequences of his actions.
Ms. Powell was first interviewed and talked to about this incident. She didn't say nothing about Mr. Wade. Pulled the gun on her, put it to her stomach, put it to her head, say, "I'm gonna shoot you and the baby." That's all cap. That's all made up. I also want to see, you told the officers about the gun being put to your stomach and put to your head, and he said he's gonna shoot you and the baby. I want you to find that for me. You got a chance to review your interview?
Yes.
You didn't say it on the interview either, did you?
I thought I said it on the interview.
The prosecution, however, countered this argument. They focused on the inconsistencies in Quincy's story. While he claimed that Maurice fired first, there was no concrete evidence to support this claim.
16 shots were fired in that bathroom. We do not know who shot first.
In fact, the medical examiner's testimony suggested that Maurice's fatal wound, the gunshot to the chest, would have been immediately fatal, and it was likely the first shot fired. As the trial continued, it became evident that the jury was being faced with a complex web of emotions, deceit, and conflicting accounts. But through all the legal arguments, the focus remained on one heartbreaking truth. Maurice's life had been stolen in an act of senseless violence. Later, after 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read aloud the decision that would seal Quincy Wade's fate. The jury found Quincy Wade not guilty of felony murder, malice murder, aggravated assault, and home invasion. However, he was convicted of criminal trespassing, a misdemeanor charge related to his unlawful entry into the apartment.
Courtroom where a Muskogee County jury handed down a not guilty verdict in a murder trial late last night. The case involves two Columbus dating the same woman.
That's right. The jury has found Quincy Wade not guilty of felony murder, malice murder, aggravated assault, and home invasion. In September of 2021, according to police, Quincy Wade was arrested in LaGrange and charged with the murder of 26-year-old Maurice Von Jackson, also known as Luke.
The outcome was devastating for Maurice's family, who had hoped for justice for their son.
So you won't hear her voice due to technical difficulties, but we'll tell you what she said. Surrounded by her family outside the courtroom, Von Jackson's sister says she wanted justice to be served yesterday. Life has been difficult without her brother for the past 2 years. They grew up very close, living in the same household, and life has been different without him here.
Despite the acquittal on most charges, Quincy Wade's legal battle was not over. He was still facing the consequences of his actions in a broader societal sense, and his future remained uncertain. Maurice's family and many of his friends couldn't help but feel that the verdict didn't do justice to the life that had been lost, and that the true cost of Quincy's actions had yet to be fully realized. Maurice's family, especially his father, was devastated by the outcome of the trial. For them, the verdict felt like a slap in the face.
Not about who first. It's the case about one thing, when my son lost his life protecting himself and who he was with that night. When trouble came knocking on their door, they place to stay where they was, mind their business. That's all the case is about.
A sign that no matter what they went through, the justice they sought for their son had been denied. Maurice's mother, in particular, found it hard to believe that someone who had taken her son's life could walk away with little more than a slap on the wrist for trespassing. But despite the trial's conclusion, Maurice's family remained determined. They vowed to continue advocating for justice not only for Maurice, but for others who were caught in the crossfire of violence born from jealousy, rage, and miscommunication. Maurice's death wasn't just the loss of a rapper with potential, it was the loss of a son, a father, and a brother. Despite the outcome, the pain of losing Maurice remained an open wound, and the need for closure was paramount. Maurice's father, especially, vowed to continue his fight for justice, no matter the odds. The trial's outcome left many in the community questioning the legal system's ability to deliver justice in cases involving domestic violence and emotional manipulation. Many believe that Shayna Powell, despite her testimony, had played a significant role in the tragic events that led to Maurice's death.
I tell you, it's one common denominator with this whole thing, and that's Shayna Powell. And I think she should have got some charges.
She had been caught in a love triangle between two men, both of whom had displayed possessive behavior, and she had not been forthcoming with the authorities about certain key details. It seemed clear that, to some, she had contributed to the chain of events leading to Maurice's untimely death, yet Shayna faced no charges. The acquittal of Quincy Wade ignited a broader conversation about domestic abuse and toxic relationships. Maurice's death wasn't just about a man losing his life, it was about the devastating consequences of toxic relationships that spiraled out of control, leading to tragic outcomes. It became evident to those who had followed the case that there were much deeper issues at play, issues that couldn't be solved by a trial verdict alone. Maurice's story quickly spread throughout the community of Columbus, Georgia, and beyond. His untimely death served as a stark reminder of how unchecked jealousy, abusive relationships, and emotional manipulation could destroy lives. Maurice had been a rising star in the music scene, with his unique rap style and growing fan base. He had survived the streets, but in the end, it was his personal relationships that proved to be his downfall. But beyond the shocking details of the case, Maurice's death left behind a grieving family and a devastated community. Maurice's friends, who had seen him rise up from his hardships, found themselves grappling with a painful question. How could things have escalated to this point? Maurice's death wasn't just the loss of a promising artist, it was the loss of a son, a brother, and a friend. Maurice's mother often spoke of how difficult it was to reconcile the man her son had become with the tragic events that led to his death. In a way, Maurice's death sparked a fire within the family to raise awareness about the signs of domestic abuse, emotional manipulation, and jealous behavior. They wanted others to understand how easily such situations could escalate. For them, the case was no longer just about their personal loss, it was about preventing another tragedy from happening. The pain of losing Maurice would never fade, but they knew that fighting for justice and raising awareness about these issues was the only way to honor his memory. The community rallied around Maurice's family as they prepared for the emotional task of laying him to rest. It was a ceremony filled with both sorrow and celebration of his life. Maurice was remembered not only for his talent and potential in the music world, but also for the love and loyalty he showed to his family and friends. Friends and family gathered to say their goodbyes, each person bringing their own memories of Maurice, whether it was from his childhood or his budding music career. The funeral service was a somber yet powerful reminder of the fragility of life and how easily it can be taken away in an instant. But it also served as a rallying cry for those who had known and loved him, urging them to keep his memory alive and to continue fighting for justice, no matter how difficult the path might be. Maurice's story is not just a tragedy, it's a cautionary tale about the consequences of unresolved jealousy, violent impulses, and unchecked emotions. The ripple effects of his death are still being felt in his community, and his family's fight for justice is far from over. As time passed, the community began to move forward, but the questions surrounding Maurice's death lingered. Was the verdict truly fair? Was justice served? And if not, what could be done to ensure that such a tragic situation didn't repeat itself? While Maurice's family never received the level of justice they had hoped for, they found solace in knowing that they had fought for their son's memory and for a cause larger than their personal grief. Meanwhile, Shayna Powell faced her own internal battles. She would never be able to shake the guilt of her involvement in the events leading up to Maurice's death. Shayna's role in the events that led to Maurice's tragic death remained a subject of public debate, but the legal system had already spoken, leaving her to wrestle with the consequences of her actions in the court of public opinion. For Maurice's friends, the loss of their beloved friend continued to sting. His music and his potential remained frozen in time, and they struggled with the reality that his life had been cut short by a senseless act of violence. Maurice's fans continued to support his legacy, streaming his music, remembering his bold, unapologetic style, and honoring his memory. But the case wasn't just about Maurice, Quincy, and Shayna. It was about everyone who had ever been caught in the grip of domestic violence, whether it was physical, emotional, or psychological. The case forced many to confront uncomfortable truths about abusive relationships and the deadly consequences they can bring. The tragic ending of Maurice's life served as a stark reminder that violence, especially in intimate relationships, can escalate quickly and devastatingly. For those who were following the case, it was clear that something had to be done. While the trial had left many questions unanswered, it had also ignited a conversation that could not be ignored. Maurice's family hoped that through their pain they could help others avoid a similar fate. And for Maurice Vaughn Jackson, a young man who had once dreamed of stardom, the true legacy he left behind was one of caution and a call to protect others from the same fate. His death should never be forgotten, and his life should continue to inspire change. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.